On the 11th of March 1864, Dale Dyke Dam, that's around about a couple of miles in that direction. Sadly, the dam wall burst and it flooded the Loxley Valley, taking away the village of Damflask along with it. 240 people were recorded as losing their lives, 100 buildings and as many as 15 bridges. It changed the landscape forever. Dale Dyke Dam, a 34-metre high, 390-metre long mound of Victorian optimism. And by 1864, the reservoir was nearly full for the first time. However, on the 10th of March 1864, a narrow slit opens near the base and water begins to weep. Night drops, the wind howls, and at 11:30, the embankment sighs like a ship giving up. A 15-metre slice tears out. 3 million tonnes of water drop 65 metres in seconds. The only warning Damflask gets is a millworker, Stephenson Fountain, galloping bareback to shout that the dam's about to go. He hammers on doors. Half the villagers sprint uphill, the rest, too tired, too sceptical, or just plain slow, stay in bed. At 12:07, the wave comes, 8 metres high, racing at 30 kilometres per hour. It scoops up the mill and uses the roof as a battering ram. 46 people in Damflask die within 6 minutes. Downstream, the final toll hits 238. And at the dawn, the village is a wreck of looms and roof beams. Nobody was to rebuild the village of Damflask. And this is Damflask Reservoir, and it has a 1,300 foot wide dam wall, and it spans across the valley, and it is its highest 92 feet deep. The small village of Damflask was situated over there. It had mills, it had a public house, it had the river flowing through there too, farmland, a few bridges and a few houses and cottages too. Here's an overhead Google image of Damflask Reservoir, and the dam is situated on the right. Now if you was to concentrate on the centre of that body of water, we'll change to this overlay, you can see where it says Damflask. That is where the village was situated. We'll go over to a full map from the early 1800s and you can see it all just there. Look, we've got a paper mill on the right, we've got a corn mill at the bottom and another mill house also in the centre, and Damflask Bridge on the left where it says Flash Hill. All the mills, the pub and the houses and buildings were all situated right there, and now just memories remain below the water. Now the village itself of Damflask, it was never rebuilt, and this was because there were already plans to build a reservoir in this valley. Now some might say if that was done today, that's been done intentionally, or they've created that flood or that fire to get rid of a building so they can then be forced to redevelop it. But I don't think that was their way of thinking, although I'm not sure why some 30 odd years later the reservoir was finally constructed and completed and operational from 1897. So just before the overspill, we've got these beautiful stone piers. It's actually a measurement gauge on this one, look, and clearly you can see it is in fact nowhere near that, is it? So that water needs to come up some way, doesn't it? You've got this wall for the overspill and then the step cascade underneath a 5-arched bridge just in front that takes the water down to the spillway. Looking below those arches closest to us, you can see that it does in fact take a left turn, look, as it passes below the road above. And directly opposite this spillway mouth, there was a corn mill, there was a mill house, there was a bridge, there was a road and a river going directly through the centre. I believe there was also dwellings and a small public house as well. There was also a couple of pack horse bridges going across the river, but all of it got washed away. There was factories too. People lost their lives, as I said earlier, and it's sad to think, similar to the Derwent Valley Reservoirs, Ladybar, isn't it, and Derwent Village below, that the ghosts of that village and the families and workers are just resting where the water is today. From the bridge above the spillway, I can show you what it looks like from this angle. But the main thing I really want to do is to get across the road safely, and I can show you that spillway from here, look. There we go, how about that, look. Still looking a little bit damp near the edges, and just around there is where it would take its descent down to the valley below. So what I'm going to do now is follow the road across the dam wall, take a right at the end and hopefully drop down to the bottom of the cascade, and where there's also an abandoned compensation reservoir. Right, got ourselves a public footpath which will take us to the lower part of the valley. And there should also be a bridge just down here which will take us over one of the outfalls from the dam before we get to the overspill and that abandoned compensation reservoir that I touched upon earlier on in this video. Okay, look, there's that huge cascade that normally would have water thundering down it, the outfall from the dam wall being just over there in the centre of shot, as you can see just now. But on my left, you can see something that looks like the outer ring of a coliseum. That is the outer wall of the compensation reservoir, Stacey Bank Compensation Reservoir, built to provide a constant flow and feed of water down the valleys, which helped feed the mills that was all the way down there. And as the decline of industry came along, the requirement for the compensation reservoir also came to an end. So I'm stood on the outfall. Now you might be thinking, hang on, why is the water coming down along this riverbed? Well, there's also the outfall from the dam. The dam wall has its own feed of water because of course it needs to still provide a flow down the river to feed the area around the valley, as well as holding back a load of water in the reservoir itself for our own drinking water needs. It's a huge wall, this, isn't it? You can even see dead in centre there, it's like an overspill from the compensation reservoir that must have at one time flowed down and gone back down there into the riverbed. The way it just curves, look, it's like the bottom of a cooling tower at a power station. We're going to keep walking round. And I'm right up beside it again, look. And the land has risen. I think this is a footpath. It seems well trodden down. What if we can get through there and poke the camera through? There we go, look. So you can see in there, it's vast, isn't it? It's absolutely huge. Pan it around a little way. Looks like it's made of stone breeze blocks right the way around, with a earth embankment on the left hand side, which is probably also lined with stone below all that greenery. Well, I have momentarily stepped over. It's like a ledge. That's all it was, look, just up and over. Seems a little bit too steep to actually run down or even run back up safely to even get into the bottom. Just look at this. I came down. Some sort of mechanism just here, look. So, some of you would know what that is all about. I'm not exactly sure what that is, because it is sealed onto the wall and it's too far apart to be some kind of ladder, isn't it? It's some sort of measuring gauge. Of course, you've got the inevitable graffiti, but it's what you come to expect, isn't it? I'm just pleased to be inside here, to be honest. So here's a pipe section, look, which must have been for the flow out of here. You see it curves around just here and goes below the wall. The outfall from the main reservoir is just there, and the cascade down, and the riverbed just the other side of this wall. So yeah, that's full of rubbish, not been used for a while. And then you've got this section here, look, which must have had something to do with that. I expect it was probably slightly higher off the ground and maybe there's a piece missing, but those that know this stuff better than I do might be able to clear up exactly how these two bits of kit connected together. Just above right, you can see that little archway, look, and that would have been the overflow, wouldn't it, that was looking at when was on the other side. Just fantastic to be in here, isn't it? That concrete ledge that I first stepped foot on when I crossed over, now that does appear to run all the way around. And I'm also going to say that that thing that looked like a widely spaced out ladder, there was potentially another one here looking at these brackets, and there is also a hole just here. So I'm actually going to assume this is the outfall and that very first pipe that I was looking at, and this one potentially in some form being what helped fill this compensation reservoir. There is the concrete wall on the back facing that main Colosseum-like wall right on the opposite side. This is absolutely brilliant. I thought that I would get to see it, but I didn't think that I would get to see inside it. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this video, taking a look at the Damflask and Stacey Bank compensation reservoirs. It's quite fascinating. All this built for industry declines, therefore this declines too. I'm now off towards Stocksbridge to do a disused railway walk. So I'll see you in the very next one. Thank you very much. Bye for now.